Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
The Umbrella Academy Season 3 just hit Netflix. It's been a few years since we've last seen the superheroes who are members of the Umbrella Academy. A fun show. In general, I have been looking forward to this new season. I enjoyed the new season, kind of. It definitely takes a while to ramp up. It ramps up towards the end. But one thing this show does that's kind of fun, kind of interesting, is that in a lot of ways, each season is the same. The mission, the problem, the issue that this superhero team is trying to avoid and trying to solve is very similar. Season 1, they're trying to avoid Armageddon, the apocalypse. The asteroid is supposed to hit the world, and they're trying to stop it. The second season, it's all about a nuclear war that's supposed to be happening, that's supposed to end humanity. And in this third season, it is a very similar type of reality-ending event that they have to try and stop. But the bulk of this show, aside from the goal being the same in every season, is you're getting to see these characters interacting with each other. You're getting to see these characters who are flawed. I mean, that's one of the things I love about this show, despite being a superhero show or property in general, which superhero stuff in general is far too saturated. It's almost everything coming out is based on a superhero comic book on some level, but there are a few shows, there are a few movies that are doing it a little bit differently, at least taking it away from the kind of the DC, the Marvel type of superhero stuff, which is for me is kind of exhausting. And this is more in the vein of like The Boys, which is another superhero show that I quite enjoy, where you're seeing flawed people, and it's not just bad storytelling like you would see in a lot of DC movies. It's not just like happiness, which is in a lot of Marvel movies, even though I think Marvel has done a great job with their stuff. But I like the flawed characters. I like the fact that they're like a dysfunctional family. It's an interesting story. But it does take a while for this season to ramp up. But once it does, in every season, it feels like there's a lot of setup going on. And then at some point, the rubber hits the road and things start to happen and it gets really exciting. And this season, very similarly to that. You also have the real life metamorphosis of Ellen Page into Elliot Page, coming out as trans, and his character in this show, written to reflect that. His character Vanya is now Victor, which I appreciated how it was written in. I appreciated how that character was handled. It was nice, not only nice to see that it was reflected within the story, they wrote it into the story, but also just nice to see how in so many other movies or TV shows would have taken that to give them a reason to add drama into a show, like having characters that had a problem with it. And it was kind of refreshing to see how accepting all of the other characters were. Almost too much, maybe. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I am 100% a fan of anybody living their true, authentic selves. I think it is ridiculous and sad that people still to this day are not able to live their authentic selves. And if you know, being you is being you, and if that is somehow like you being who you are is somehow like offensive to people. It's like those people just need to not be in your existence. They're just useless people. Anybody that would have a problem with somebody living their authentic self is the problem. Like they have a need to dictate and control other people, which in America seems to be a huge issue, as we saw this past week, Roe versus Wade being overturned, which I'm not going to talk about obviously in this show, but we're definitely going down a path in this country where those people who seem to be offended by anything that's not your typical straight white Christian male is offensive and should be controlled and should not exist. So it's nice and refreshing to see this show come out and to see Elliot Page come out and being able to live his true self. As a character, not my favorite character. Victor / Vanya kind of has been the antagonist in the previous seasons, has had major issues with her family, his family. Obviously, if you've seen the first 2 seasons, I'm going to be spoiling stuff. I'm going to assume you've seen this. But Victor's, like, even in this season, is doing similar things that he was doing in previous seasons, where it's like Victor is and cares for and protects somebody who is actively dangerous to the group, who is actively making things worse. And it's kind of a bummer. I mean, in this, it's interesting because Victor's able to learn more about his powers, which seem to be very effective. When they were transferred to the other character, Harland, the kid from last season, is now grown up. So that whole aspect was fun. But it is really boils down to the different interactions these characters have. My favorite characters in this whole thing are Klaus and Five. They are the dude that plays Five, Alden Gallagher. So good. Like, you want to talk about a kid who is portraying an older person who is in the body of a child. Like, the mannerisms, the way he speaks, the acting, all of it is so on point. Like, at no point do I believe that it's just a kid, right? Pulling that off. Also, one of the only people to kind of be a few steps ahead of everybody, which also kind of adds to the fact that, you know, is older, wiser, all that. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear The Many Faces, original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high-quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. I also love Klaus, the actor Robert Sheehan. So much fun. Was a huge fan of Misfits, was another superhero show many years ago in the UK about a bunch of kids doing their public service, and a thunderstorm happens and they start getting powers, and I think his powers are even the same. I think he was could come back to life, I believe. It's been a while since I've watched that show. But so much fun and so great to see him in this show, and such a fun character. I mean, the last season was a lot of fun where you find out that he's like running a cult and all that stuff. In this one, he spends a lot of time. They're in like an alternate universe with an alternate timeline where now the instead of Umbrella Academy, it's the Sparrow Academy, and it's the dad knowing that he had felt like he had messed up with his previous children creating the Umbrella Academy, went back and decided to do it again, which that kind of idea, the idea of the dad kind of taking different swings, like having the ability to like fail and try, almost like a Groundhog Day type of a scenario where things end, he fails, and then but he's able to go back and try again, is very critical to the overall narrative of the show, which is very confusing at the end. Like at the end of this, the way this season ends, confusing, very confusing. One of the very few times I've ever had to search YouTube for an explainer video, and apparently a lot of the answers are you can find with just subtle hints throughout the show, but also you would had to read the comic book, which I am not a fan of anything that requires you to have done homework prior to watching a thing. The Zack Snyder films are very big on that, where there's just kind of references to things, but doesn't really take the time to actually tell a story in any way. It requires you to go in with a bunch of knowledge, which defeats the purpose of a movie or a TV show. Like it feels like supplemental kind of material rather than a self-contained, cohesive type of a story. So on that aspect, the ending was kind of a bummer. It felt like easy how everything kind of happened at the end. But then once I watched the explainer video, it made a lot more sense and makes it kind of interesting. And part of that is that the dad has this ability to, and he mentions it in this season where he's sitting down with Five when like the black hole is starting to consume everything. It's getting close to the end. And he's sitting down on the edge of reality where it's like the nothing is coming to take over. And he mentions that he's made these mistakes. He's seen the world end multiple times. So this is one of those times where he tried again, has the Sparrow Academy, which is interesting, bringing in this like other group of superhero people. You have Ben is back, and another disappointing part of this season is Ben is an asshole. Such a bummer. Kind of has some redemption towards the end, but not only is Ben kind of a bummer in this version of reality, but also the entire Sparrow Academy feels kind of sidelined through a lot of this season as well. Like it seemed like they were going to be a bigger part, but they weren't. It felt like this season felt like at the same time it was overly complex, but then also they cut out a lot of stuff that to try and simplify it. And in cutting that stuff out, it has that complexity, but without the connective tissue to really make it all seem. And it feels like there should have been more of the Sparrow Academy, aside from just like the Luther and Sloane love. Right, that's sweet. I mean, that whole thing with Luther and Sloane, how he finally stands up to Allison, where she's kind of manipulative. Not a character that I really like, Allison. I mean, she's lost a lot through these adventures. She lost her kid in a past reality. She lost her husband in the previous reality. So she's technically lost a lot of stuff, but she still is pretty selfish. Throughout this whole thing, it's always kind of been about her, and she's always kind of strung Luther along. Knowing that he has the feelings he has for her, she kind of uses that against him. And in this season, I enjoy that Luther finally stands up to her. That was kind of nice. But overall, the Sparrow Academy stuff was kind of a bummer. It was a pleasant surprise to see Ashtray from Euphoria in this show, playing the child of Diego and Leela, which that was kind of fun. I enjoy that relationship, that dynamic between Diego and Leela. Turns out that he wasn't. Like, it was a fun thing. Didn't really make sense, like, why he was so much older. But, you know, the thing with this show is, and the time jumps and the different realities, it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know. But I did enjoy seeing Ashtray in this. His character, again, kind of sidelined, and just another character that just kind of disappears, because people disappear throughout this because the black hole is slowly eating reality. You get Harlan grown up. You got a moment where Leela and Five are trying to go and on their own side little mission, and you get a little bit of bonding between them, considering Five was responsible for Leela's parents' death, but then that led her to being trained in the art of, she's one of the kids that wasn't taken by Reggie, had powers, but was like in the last season was brought in by the head lady and taught, and she kind of has these mimicking powers, which is kind of fun. But they had a nice little kind of back and forth, Five and her, as they're trying to do the thing. But yeah, it's mostly just a remix of the same plot. I enjoy some of the characters. Klaus has some fun stuff. He has these moments with this version of his dad where his dad's like actually nicer, and they takes the time to help develop Klaus's abilities to become, I mean, it seemed as if his only abilities were to communicate and see dead people, and then dead people could like possess his body. Like, he has this kind of connection with death in a way that's very special. But in this season, him developing his ability to come back to life, and then him like slowly reminding all the times in his life where he had died and just come back. I appreciated that kind of development with that character. I enjoyed the bonding that he did with his dad was a lot of fun, despite the dad kind of using that whole thing as a way to manipulate the entire situation. But I still enjoyed it nonetheless, and it made for a fun scene where Luther dies and they both are dead together and hanging out in like the void of the afterlife. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. Harlan's cassette tapes I thought was a lot of fun, how he would listen to like just like bees or the sound of like rustling a field while the breeze is going through it, like just nature sounds to help him block out everything. That was kind of a fun thing. I didn't know who he was. Like, at first I thought he was the guy who ran the diner for some reason in the 50s, and he was back to like seek revenge. Like, maybe he got powers or something while that whole thing happened. But then it wasn't him. It was Harlan just grown up, the kid from the first one. And then you find out that like he was responsible for the deaths of all of their parents in this new reality. Like, that's one thing. There's like so many kind of big things going on that they're trying to wrap up together. Like the whole Harlan thing felt like it deserved more. The whole Sparrow Academy thing felt like it deserved more. They could have just, like, so many of these things didn't necessarily have to be there. It really felt like what happens in movies a lot of the times, where a movie's based on a book and you have to cut out a ton of stuff if it's based on a book because movies are a lot shorter. And sometimes when that's not done well, it feels like things were cut out and just not really fleshed out. The end of this season kind of has that feeling in a lot of ways. So I did have problems with this season. But overall, there was still some fun stuff. I mean, this season starts off with a really fun dance-off, which set a tone in the way where I'm like, oh, this is going to be an amazing season. And then it just turns out that was just a hallucination and wasn't real. And I was like, okay, this is... I don't know. I thought it was going to go completely wacky, especially since they're in this like new universe where there's this other thing, and it's like, oh, is there all battles dance? Like, are they really going to upend this kind of a genre? And no, they're not. And I did enjoy the other powers of the Sparrow characters, kind of. I mean, the guy who's, I don't know if he was their number one. The black dude in the Sparrow group who was like the first to disappear, like that was stupid. Like his thing of doing push-ups on the side of the building and then wiping the sweat off of his face and throwing the towel into the crowd that's watching him was pretty stupid. But I did enjoy that the Sparrows were set up more like, you know, very similar in a lot of ways to like the superheroes in Boys, where it's like they are a product. They are what capitalism would do to superheroes, where they are more about selling branded and licensed items than they are about actually doing good work. So I did kind of appreciate that, despite the fact that it felt a bit sidelined. It was just one of those storylines that just felt like stuff was cut out. Let's see. I did like how this ends. How they're like all back they all lose their powers, so Luther looks just like a normal person now. None of them have their abilities. They get their appendages back that they lost. Right? But they're in this new reality that was engineered by their dad in the hotel, that's like this machine that's able to reprogram the universes to reboot and try again. Which is an interesting thing, which would have been fun if they had fleshed out that idea more instead of having it very subtle and then I have to go watch an explainer video. But that's what he did. He like reprogrammed while they're standing on the stars. He's like reprogramming this new universe, making sure that Allison gets everything she wanted, all of the things that she had lost from the previous universes. She gets her daughter back. She's married to the husband from the 50s. So she gets everything she wants. Right? Spoiled Allison. But then everybody else loses. There's the potential for more doppelgangers because they showed a Ben on a train and he didn't have a scar, so it's assumed that that is one of the doppelgangers that exists in this reality. But it's interesting, like the setup is definitely like all of the ends of these episodes, they end on like this kind of energy where you definitely want to tune into the next episode, but then it almost feels like they don't honor that momentum. And even how it ends, the end of season 3, setting up for season 4, definitely gives you that energy where it's like, I can't wait to see what happens in season 4, but then I have a feeling season 4 is not going to honor that momentum. Like, there's going to be a lot of season 4 where they're going to be setting up this new universe. Now they don't have powers, but I'm still in. I just enjoy these characters, and it's kind of interesting to see them change and grow. So, despite the fact that I wasn't a fan of a lot of aspects of this, I think I enjoyed it more than I didn't enjoy it, and it's a show that I'll still keep watching. It's not like the best show on TV. I wouldn't even. I would say The Boys is a better show than this one, but it's still fun. I still enjoy it, and I really did enjoy how they were able to write and change Victor's character and Elliot Page, and the fact that Elliot Page is the first name credited, and I rewatched the previous seasons, and they changed the credits to Elliot Page at the end. But Elliot does not feel like the star of this. I mean, it is definitely an ensemble cast, and I would say Elliot Page is the biggest star out of all of the actors, but that character doesn't at all feel like it is a major character necessarily, despite the fact that it has been a big like antagonist type of force in the stories. But also the Robo-Mom of the Sparrow family, her worship of the black hole as if it's a god, speaking in tongues, like the whole like ultra conservative Christian like fundamentalist type of thing, was a huge bummer, especially the reality we're living in now where those religious extremists are destroying this country. But that was kind of a bummer to see that whole aspect. But anyway, overall, I enjoyed it. I hope that, like, I would say probably season 2 might be my favorite overall. I think this is I would say this is the worst season out of the 3. If I had to rank them, I would say season 2, season 1, and then season 3 is low end. But still, like, I enjoy these characters enough of these characters enough to keep watching, and excited for season 4. See what happens. See, I mean, they could come back and knock it out of the park, and I'd be super stoked. And or it just completely crash and burn and just end it. Either way. The Umbrella Academy Season 3 on Netflix now. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.